In this video, we are talking about Georgetown, Texas. According to the U.S. Census, Georgetown, Texas is the fastest growing city, over 50,000, in the whole country. And so yes, in this video, we will be talking about what makes Georgetown, Texas so appealing, and of course, in the spirit of brutal honesty, some of the cons against Georgetown, Texas as well, so that hopefully by the end of the video, you have a good enough idea as to whether or not Georgetown, Texas is the right move for you. Stay tuned. Hey again everybody, this is Frank with the Living in Austin group at eXp Realty. Every week we put out new content about living in Austin, Texas, the good and the bad, so consider subscribing if you haven't already and ring that little bell to get notified every time we put out a new video. We also love the reach outs we get now all the time from people just like you in need of our help when relocating to the greater Austin area, so don't hesitate, keep them coming whether you're 9 days away or 90. Reach out to our team whether you shoot us a text, send us an email, give us a call any day of the week, any time of day. So yes, we are talking about Georgetown, Texas in this video, and for the record, I'd say over the past year and a half or so, we have made a number of videos about Georgetown, Texas as well, including a vlog tour. So if you are curious to learn more about Georgetown, Texas, feel free to check those out. But yes, once again, the time has come to touch on the subject of Georgetown once again because, as mentioned, it is the fastest growing city according to the U.S. Census. And I remember a time when the fastest growing city was Leander, Texas, and I remember a time when the fastest growing city was Round Rock, Texas, and now it's Georgetown's turn. And I do find it interesting that these fastest growing cities are usually going to be in proximity of Austin, Texas. And so let's get right to it and talk about Georgetown, Texas, the good and the bad, and what there is to learn and really what there is to expect if you're going to be living there. And so I thought we could start with the con, get the negative out of the way, because on this channel we do pride ourselves in being pretty blunt and brutally honest, at risk of discouraging you. But hey, when you're making such an important decision as relocating and such a financially important decision, we feel you deserve to know as much as you possibly can. So to get the negative out of the way regarding Georgetown, Texas, let us start with the subject of its location. And this has always been something I have felt is just not one of the stronger suits of Georgetown, Texas. It's not going to be one of its strengths. And that is because Georgetown, Texas, on average, proximity to downtown Austin on the low end is going to be maybe 35 minutes, over a half an hour easily. But then once you factor in any kind of traffic, some kind of accident, some kind of rush hour, it can easily look like between 45 minutes and an hour oftentimes. And so I bring that up because a lot of the people who relocate to the greater Austin area are doing so for work. And while yes, many of them are going to be working remote from home, a lot of them aren't. And a lot of these jobs are in corporate downtown. And so it's one thing if you want to dabble in the city and enjoy the fruits of Austin, Texas recreationally, then the drive isn't so bad. But if you're going to be working, say, 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and you're dealing with a commute on average between 30 and 60 minutes, depending on traffic, that is something that I would encourage you to consider if you're contemplating a move to Georgetown, Texas. Now, on the flip side to that, a lot of the people who relocate to Austin, Texas are doing so for those tech jobs. As most of us know by now, a lot of those companies from Silicon Valley and the Bay Area and San Francisco are flocking and migrating to the greater Austin area, creating what has been dubbed Silicon Hills in North Austin, which is what we call that tech hub. So it's not going to be quite as bad of a commute if you are coming from Georgetown as opposed to downtown, but it's still going to be on average, I'd say between 25 and maybe 40 minutes, depending on traffic. 40 minutes to the tech hub being if you're really getting some bad traffic, but if you're going at an easy time or without much resistance on the freeway, you can get there in 20 to 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. So that is relatively good news if you are going to be working out of that tech hub. But then again, it still might be too much. You know, some people might have been used to working from home and now they're not, or maybe some people have been used to commutes of 10 to 20 minutes max, and then they're looking at this instead. So I realize it's not for everyone, and that is why I consider this something that works against Georgetown, Texas, it being the location of Georgetown. But with that out of the way, now let's talk about what relatively will make Georgetown, Texas appealing and why it is currently the fastest growing city according to the U.S. Census. So we'll call this category the appeal. And within this category, I have written down subcategories in my notes to reference on basically what you can expect if you're contemplating a move to Georgetown, Texas, what it is going to be like living in Georgetown, Texas. And one of these subcategories of its appeal is what I would call the feel of Georgetown. And this is something I feel, pun intended, that makes Georgetown, Texas unique when compared to the surrounding or neighboring cities outside of Austin, Texas, because we do have the Round Rocks of the world, or the Cedar Parks, or the Leanders, or the Dripping Springs, or the Huttos, the Mainers, the Elgins, the Taylors, the Kyles, the Butas, the San Marcoses, and places like that, right? So what makes Georgetown, Texas stand out, in my opinion, is the feel that I've always had whenever I'm in Georgetown, and I used to spend a considerable amount of time in Georgetown, Texas. And that would be that Georgetown, Texas has this sense of mixing or blending suburban, rural, and urban all in one place. And that can be very attractive because if we're talking about, say, Leander or Cedar Park, for example, or Pflugerville or Round Rock, those places are absolutely going to have a suburban feel. 100% you are in suburbia, even though they are their own respected cities with their own zip codes. I'm not trying to insult them, but you're there, you're in suburbia. If you meet a local Austinite and you say, I'm from Cedar Park, oh, suburbia. So they have that feel. And what I like about Georgetown, Texas is that while it's not going to be as rural, say, as Liberty Hill, Texas, or a place that's really more on the outskirts that's underdeveloped, Georgetown is going to be developed enough, but it's going to have peace and quiet. It's going to have a certain flavor, maybe regarding the politics or the demographics, I'm not quite sure, but you're not in the urban setting of downtown Austin, Texas, so there is going to be a suburban element because of the neighborhoods. However, you're not going to be purely in suburbia because Georgetown has its own town square and downtown area of its own, which makes it more urban in its own right. And then, of course, as mentioned, because it's north enough outside of the city, you're going to have a lot of land and nature spots that gives it a rural feel, a rural attraction, if you will. And on that note, another subcategory I wrote down would be its things to do, because it does have, in my opinion, a surplus of things to do for all different types of people. So if we're comparing Georgetown, Texas to other suburbs or towns outside of downtown Austin, a lot of these other places are going to have a fair amount of things to do, but they're going to be very suburban things to do. So grocery stores, or maybe the local park, or a shopping center, things like that, right, that you can expect in suburbia. But in the case of Georgetown, Texas, as mentioned, that downtown area, that downtown hub that people like to call the square, is a place where you can find wineries, is a place where you can find art exhibits, is a place that has theaters, is a place that has bars, is a place that you can really have what people might not like me saying this, but kind of a miniature Austin, like a dwarfed Austin, just in Georgetown, Texas. And so that's really attractive in a place that has peace and quiet, in a place that has a rural feel. All of a sudden, if you go to its downtown area, you can walk around downtown and not necessarily have a goal in mind or a destination in mind or a direction in mind, and just quote unquote get lost in downtown Georgetown, just enjoying the fruits and what it has to offer. In addition to downtown Georgetown, you also have nature-based things to do as well. And so one of the main draws of living in downtown Austin is paddleboarding, is canoeing, is tubing, is going to Lake Austin or going to Lady Bird Lake or places like that, even maybe driving a bit towards Lake Travis. Well, in Georgetown, Texas, you have similar parks. You can jump off cliffs. You can go to Lake Georgetown and bring the boat out. You can go grab some beers and go with the family or with your friends and go on hikes and go on picnics. So Georgetown has a lot of those more nature-based or rural attractions that a lot of people like downtown Austin for. But again, not to be redundant, in Georgetown, you're not going to be stuck with the rural vibes. You're going to have the downtown area as mentioned too. Now, another reason why Georgetown, Texas is so appealing, another subcategory I wrote down, is its affordability, hence why it's growing so quickly, because people obviously aren't priced out of it. They're not hesitating to move there because they're scared of the price tags. And so what I will say about that is Georgetown is not going to be the most affordable town or suburb outside of Austin at all, whatsoever. You're going to have much more affordable places like the Huttos of the world, or the Mainers, or the Elgins, or the Taylors, or the Kyles, or even the Butas. But Georgetown, Texas is also not going to be high-end either. So it's not going to be as expensive as, say, Dripping Springs, or Bee Cave, or Lakeway, or the Westlake Hills for that matter, which are going to be closer to $1 million or absolutely well into the millions. And so as it currently stands, the median home price in Georgetown, Texas is sitting right around $520,000, $530,000, which I in my experience in this business, would call average or middle of the road regarding the suburbs. And so the really sought after suburbs of Austin, Texas are usually going to be either in the high fours or the low fives. So that's right on par, if I would say, usually $500,000 for Leander or Cedar Park, for example. And so that does make Georgetown appealing because it's priced fairly competitively with its neighboring towns. However, in its own respect, Georgetown might have even more to offer. And so people look at that price tag, and it's close enough proximity to downtown Austin or the city limits, which is becoming astronomically expensive. And they all of a sudden make sense of how Georgetown could just be the perfect place for them in terms of finances and how it all lines up regarding your budgeting and planning for such a big move. Now, on the note of affordability, another subcategory I wrote down would be the types of homes. And this is something that is appealing about Georgetown in my experience, and in my opinion, what I would say is that in a lot of these other neighboring towns or suburbs or cities outside of Austin, Texas, but close enough to Georgetown, you have a lot of the same types of homes. Some of them might be cookie cutter. You might have your master plan communities, which a lot of people like. But in Georgetown, you have quite a variety of different homes too. So you could get mid-century homes in Georgetown. You can get homes from the 1800s in Georgetown. You can get master plan communities in Georgetown. And what a lot of our clients have liked about Georgetown, Texas, is the fact that it has a lot of land. And so people coming from the Californias of the world, the Portland, Oregons of the world, or the New Yorks, the Canadas, the Washington states, and they're bringing their money here to buy that bang for your buck, they'll look at Georgetown because it's not uncommon in Georgetown to find a house on acres. To find a house that sits on 1 to 2 acres of land where you can have your privacy in a place, in a town, in a city like Georgetown, which already has this peace and quiet, laid back feel to it. Even better is that you can have your house without having to, look out your kitchen window and see into the neighbor's kitchen as well. And so that is very attractive regarding Georgetown, is that depending on your taste, if you want a new build construction home, or if you want a previously owned home, or something maybe in the middle, depending on your taste, Georgetown most likely has it to offer, and that is very attractive at its price point over its neighboring suburbs, which again factors into, in my opinion, why so many people are flocking there, evidently making it the fastest growing city according to the US Census. Furthermore, regarding the appeal of Georgetown, Texas, and why so many people are flocking there, let us talk about now the subcategories of the subcategories, little smaller things that I can just bunch together and briefly tell you about. For example, the schools. So in the greater Austin area, you have your 2 cream of the crop districts, which typically are going to be Leander Independent School District and the Round Rock Independent School District, but simply because those are the 2 more popular powerhouse districts that the greater Austin area has to offer, does not mean you should be so quick to dismiss the Georgetown Independent School District either. It is quite respectable, and in our experience, a lot of people flocking here from out of state are doing so with their families, and Georgetown ISD is absolutely on their list, and rightfully so. Another thing regarding Georgetown, Texas is it's the type of people who are there. And so that is something that I would describe as relatively diverse as well, in the sense of a lot of people who, for example, were enjoying urban city limits downtown Austin have moved to Georgetown, Texas for more of a peace and quiet, but still maintaining that Austin-y feel. Another thing about Georgetown, Texas is that you're going to have a number of empty nesters there or retirees in Georgetown, Texas, wanting to go there and really just enjoy the peace and quiet without being too close to the city of Austin, but still close enough to enjoy it recreationally if you should so choose. In addition to that, another thing about Georgetown, Texas that you might like, you might not like, depending on who you are and which side of the fence you might choose to sit on, is that Georgetown, Texas is going to lean to the right, politically speaking. However, the bright side to that is it's in a way that is very charming. So it's close enough to Austin, Texas, where you have a bit of that left-wing politics kind of infused with a lot of the transplants in Georgetown. However, because of Georgetown's rich history, you are going to have a lot of that Southern charm, a lot of that respect, a lot of that slow-paced kind of rural right-wing aesthetic, if you will. And so I do find that attractive about Georgetown. It does a good job of maintaining both flavors. However, if I were to be brutally honest, I would say when you're in Georgetown, you do feel like you're in a place that leans a bit to the right politically. For you, that might be a breath of fresh air, depending on where you're coming from in the country. Or it might be not quite what you're looking for. Maybe you're looking for something that might be more left wing, or, the blue dot in the sea of red that is Austin, Texas. And so in addition to that, lastly, I'll just mention the safety of Georgetown, Texas as well. It is going to be well regarded in its safety. Some places outside of Austin, Texas have questionable safety numbers or statistics for crime. Georgetown is not one of them. It is going to be safer than pretty much, I believe the statistic is half of the rest of the state of Texas. And regarding communities of its size, of its population, Georgetown is going to be higher than average regarding its safety numbers. So when you combine all of that, when you combine the schools, when you combine the politics, when you combine the demographic, when you combine the safety and the feel and the things to do and the relative affordability, all of a sudden you have a place that is quite attractive and quite appealing. And people look at Leander, which is blown up, and people look at Round Rock, which already blew up. They look at Cedar Park, which has in many ways kind of peaked and just kind of mellowed out. And they're looking at Georgetown, which is, yes, far from Austin, Texas relatively, but still relatively close as the new hotspot, as the new boom town. And hopefully I've done a good enough job of explaining why. And so whether it is Georgetown, Texas, whether you maybe prefer Hutto, Texas, maybe you want to be south of Austin in places like Kyle, San Marcos, or Buda, or maybe west if you're wanting to stretch the budget for the Bee Caves or Lakeway or West Lake Hills. And so regardless of where you would like to move to the greater Austin area, that is what we are here for, making that move as smooth as possible, finding that perfect spot, and of course, getting those offers accepted. But again, the only way we can do that is by you reaching out to us. So again, don't hesitate, whether you're 9 days away or 90, reach out to our team, whether you shoot us a text, send us an email, give us a call, any day of the week, any time of day, we've got your back when moving to Austin, Texas. And again, every week we put out new content regarding Austin, Texas, the good and the bad. So remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that little bell to get notified anytime we put out a new video. Comment down below with your thoughts. Consider liking the video if we've been providing any value for you. Share it with anybody you know. And until the next one, you guys, my name is Frank. This is Living in Austin, Texas, and we will absolutely catch you later.